right, tonight we have Brian Allan, and he's an author, a speaker, a presenter, script writer, and the editor of Phenomenal Magazine. And that is just one outstanding magazine. If you've never seen it, you can get it online for free. And
Everything. Yeah.
and Brian, also too, were you involved with some documentaries called Dark Ops Exposed, um, ET-based bioweapons, mutants, and demonic aliens, UFOs from inner space? Were you involved with
That,
those?
that, that sounds kind of like what I wrote. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Warren Croyle. It was his film company that made them. I've done quite a lot of stuff for Warren over the years, right? You know, written scripts and stuff. Yeah, yeah, quite enjoy it. It's a nice guy too, really nice guy, and he pays his royalties on time, which is even better. Even
Oh,
better.
good, good, good.
Yeah, yeah. In
Now,
fact, there's an outfit in Texas who will remain nameless. They published four of my books, and I've yet to see 1 cent of royalties, and that was 20 years ago. And they're still selling them, and they just will not respond to my emails, and they won't say. I could tell you who it is, but I won't. But they will. They just refuse to pay my royalties. I hate them.
um, Brian, how did you get involved with the paranormal? What is it that made you gravitate towards that subject?
Oh wow. Okay. Well, it turns out when I was some around 2 years old. Okay, I woke up one morning and I actually saw this with my own eyes. So I mean, I was awake and I wasn't dreaming and I wasn't hallucinating and it wasn't a hypnagogic hallucination. This was real. I was awake and I was lying in my cot. That's how young I was, still in my cot, and I could see the bars. Now, my father was a musician, and in the bedroom was the only room big enough. He had a baby grand piano. Yep. And there was a piano stool, and just in front of the piano stool, not 6 feet from where I was lying in my cot, there was this entity standing watching me. It was dressed in a one piece suit. It was its arms were folded and it was watching me. And round its waist, it wasn't a belt I was wearing, it was a device of some kind because it wasn't a buckle. It was a device. And this thing was watching me. Being a child, I assumed this was something paranormal or supernatural. But it turns out I spoke to someone whose name just went out my head about 2 years ago, and he told me I'd been abducted. He said, "Well, you've been abducted and you were put back in your cot." So it's ever since that time when it turns out I was actually abducted and put back that I've had an abiding interest in the paranormal and ufology my entire life. And that is why, because I was abducted as a 2-year-old.
Wow. And did you go through a hypnosis, regressive hypnosis to determine what happened to you during that abduction?
No, and there's a good reason for that because hypnotic regression is an unreliable tool as well. And the guy who's actually doing the regression has got to be very careful that he's not feeding you the information to give you the answers that he wants to get. So no, I've never had a regression, and I don't remember. All I remember is seeing this thing. I remember going to sleep. I remember waking up again, and it was gone. But the guy that told me, in fact, I can't remember his name. It's so annoying. But he wears a big hat. Always wears a big hat, and he's into implants. This guy, the name's completely gone. But he told me, no, no offense, you were abducted. That wasn't a fairy. That was an ET. You were abducted, and that has actually, I guess, paved out the course of my life's taken ever since.
How many aliens do you think are visiting Earth? Yeah, I mean, you hear about the grays all the time, but
Mm.
what other type of aliens you think are out here?
You toss a coin, I guess. Um, I know there's all sorts of things that pass off as aliens. There's insectoids. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Like anyone is possible. But the ones we seem to have most contact with are the tall whites and the greys seem to be the ones that we have most contact with. So I would say there's two or three, but there isn't a whole bunch of ET visitors on a regular basis. I don't think so.
Yeah, and it seems like in different countries like Russia and some of the Eastern Bloc countries that they're seeing different type of aliens, and grays are. It seems like they're seeing more in America, England, and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like.
yeah, right, yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
almost like
I
they
get
got
that.
territories mapped out where this type of aliens in this territory, this type of aliens in this territory. Do you agree
Well,
with that?
it's entirely possible. I mean, we don't know what their motivation is. We don't know what their agenda is either. In fact, we don't really know why they're visiting planet Earth, other than I guess either they were aware that we were seeded by ET. ET created us here on Earth. Either that, or the planet is just suitable for their own purposes, and they use it as a zoo of Earth, and they come just to see how what they created is actually progressing. Because from what I can see, they can't be very proud of us at all because we seem to be more intent on killing ourselves than actually doing any good on the planet, and that's a damn pity, real pity.
Hmm. And you being in Scotland, you have a lot of, well, ghostly haunts. You
Oh
have
yeah.
the Loch Ness monster. Were you ever involved in any of the research on the Loch Ness monster?
Well, the Loch Ness monster, no. I have severe doubts whether it even exists. It's been suggested that you'll have heard of Alistair Crowley, I've no doubt. The late Victorian magician, black magician. Crowley always said he wasn't a black magician; he was just a magician. But he bought a house, Beletkin House, on the banks of Loch Ness, and it's been suggested that Crowley is the reason that that monster is there because while he was living in Beletkin House, he conducted a whole bunch of rituals out there, up there, and he induced and produced entities from beyond the veil to manifest here on Earth. And it suggests that some of the stuff that he was doing was resulted in the Loch Ness monster. But as far as being, I mean, there's been all sorts of stories that that Loch Ness is connected to the sea, all sorts of stuff. There's underground caverns. I know it's a pretty deep loch for sure. But whether or not this thing is actually whether this thing actually exists, I sincerely doubt. To be honest to God, I sincerely doubt it.
You know, Brian, some people think that there's like maybe a portal by Loch Ness,
Yeah,
and that the Loch Ness monster goes through the portal, and we see it in our reality, and then it
yeah,
goes
yeah.
back into the portal. Do you think something like that is possible?
I've always, Pal, all things are possible, but whether it's probable or not is an entirely different matter. I mean, although I've been into the paranormal and ufology all my life, I mean, I grew up with ufology. I mean, I was born in 1940. I'm 81 now, for heaven's sake, and I was born in 1944. I grew up with ufology when it became modern in 1947 and all the rest of it with the Roswell crash. I remember all the stuff. And as far as I'm concerned, have we been visited with ET? Of course we have. 100% accept that. But there's a lot of stuff that talked about ET that I just don't believe. I just don't accept. Um, are, is ET an interdimensional species? Maybe. I'm not going to say yes. I say maybe. There's a lot of maybes involved with ET, and maybe some of your listeners and viewers won't agree with that. But I think if they care to look at the evidence, there's more evidence that suggests that these things might come from different dimensions. Because if these things were coming from the nearest star, they have to have faster than light travel, or they have to have portals to get there. Okay. Now, these portals God knows, how they actually manufacture them. But if they were traveling in a linear A to B fashion, they would need to be traveling at many times you watt factor 10 or whatever, to quote Star Trek.
Yeah.
They need to be traveling at many times the speed of light to get here. So, and if they're coming from stars that are really far off galaxies, then God knows how long it would take them to get here. So, if they're visiting us on Earth, they have to be coming through portals. But to get the portal here, the actual end portal has to be here to start with before they could travel here. So how does the end portal, how does the end point get here to start with? These are things that actually puzzle me because I just don't know the answer. So I'm not. I beg your pardon. As long as I'm here talking to you, I will never say things that I don't actually believe or can't prove. So that is why I'll always be very guarded in what I say. In fact, I would say to the viewers and listeners, and what I would say to them is, don't believe anything that I say here, because anything that I do say is checkable. And I would ask you to go to Google or whatever and go and check out, and you'll see that I'm not talking BS. I'm actually talking, sense, if you're into the subject.
Um, Brian, I want to introduce you to Zandine. He's one of our local ufologists. I've done a lot of UFO hunts with him and a lot of ghost hunts too.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
and Zandine, Brian is an author, speaker, presenter, scriptwriter, editor of Phenomena magazine. And I know, and he's from Scotland. I know you're probably I, I know
Oh,
you really want to ask him about some UFO stuff.
well,
Yeah,
more importantly, he's my senior Pisces. That's
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
yes,
Pisces, good man, good man. Yeah, yeah.
yes. You're my senior Pisces, so I totally, I have so much respect. You don't even understand, sir. So we'll go like that. See, Paul, you don't know anything about that.
Zambi, it's so good, man. It's so good to meet you. It really is great. Absolutely great.
Yes, sir.
hey, I'm a senior Capricorn.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I know that you did your project phenomenon where you wrote the book to prove beyond a doubt, that these things exist. But I like
Yeah,
your position on only talking about things that you say, hey, you can verify. Because with UFOs, it was like that with me. People would say, well, have you seen one? I really admired and was fascinated by it, but I hadn't at that point. So I said, I don't want to lie and say yes. And then when I see one, I take away the special feeling. So I just waited until one day I was able to say, yeah, I think I did. I still don't know.
well, I can tell you this, I mean, that as I was saying to Paul, I had my first encounter with an ET-H2 when I was abducted. But,
Wow.
have I seen a UFO, a UAP as they're called now? Yes, I have. And that happened when I was about 12 years old, 13 years old. I was walking home, we'd be down the local town. I can't remember, it was a buddy of mine, but we were just doing stuff. And we're walking back up the road, and we were walking past a hospital. And I glanced up in the sky, and I could see two lights, like bright, and they were moving towards one another like that. And before they touched, which they shot apart. Yeah, I mean, like faster, were gone. These things were gone. And I just wondered what I'd seen. Then I realized that later realized that these were UAPs. Why I saw them, I don't know. It just happened to me that I saw them. But other than that, I've had ghostly experiences since then because I used to be a ghostbuster back in the day. And
Okay.
yeah, I stopped doing that. I stopped doing it because it's this sounds terribly blasé, but the thing is, if you've seen one ghost, you've seen them all, man. It really, because it, all it comes down to is the location and the circumstance. I mean, the most ghosts I ever saw was in a place called Stirling Castle, and there's a there was a thing I saw in there was pretty scary, to be fair. But the only other place I've seen ghosts that were genuinely scary is a place called the Highland Hotel in a little village called Doon in Stirlingshire in Scotland, here, in central Scotland.
Okay.
And I'll tell you. In fact, I'll tell you if it's all right with Paul, I'll tell you the story. Um, I was there with a couple of mediums because we'd been told that the woman and that owned the hotel at the time. It's all changed hands now. But the woman was having problems. She was hearing her name called out as she was walking through the hotel, stuff like that. And I took these mediums along, and they said, "Oh yeah, there's stuff here, there's stuff there." But they said the main thing is happening on the staircase, which led from the guest accommodation up to where the owner lived. So she went to she was at the bottom of the stairs. I was in the middle of the staircase, and her husband, who was another medium, was at the top of the staircase. And all of a sudden, I felt this wind start to blow down the staircase. Now, this would be January, February, March time. It was dark and it was still quite chilly. But this breeze started blowing down the staircase, and there were no doors open. And the female medium, Anne Marie, she said, "Look," she said, "this thing doesn't want us here. And if it was any more powerful, it would push us clean off the staircase. It doesn't want us here." But she said, "I'm going to try and move it on," because she said, this ghost or this entity, this spirit's on the staircase. This is the girl that fell or jumped down the staircase to commit suicide because her father, she was pregnant apparently. And at that time, way back 1700s, you just didn't get pregnant out of marriage. It just didn't happen. It just didn't happen. And she wanted, and she just decided to kill herself. So she did. And that was what was on the staircase. But the thing is that the medium said, "I'm going to move her to a dead baby, to the spirit of a dead baby." And as she said that, she didn't have to say anything else because the temperature on the staircase rose, the wind stopped, and the noises that had been going on, because what I could hear, it was like a horse whinnying, it was like farmyard stuff, like farmyard smells, like straw and hay and stuff. And it all just stopped. It all just became calm. And then the medium said she'd been reunited with the baby. And I said to her, "Well, I knew that before you said it because I could feel it." So that is one place. In fact, I even got to experience the spirit of a dead dog. This was so strange. In one of the bedrooms, because there was like ghosts in every room in this house, in this hotel, because the hotel itself was comprised of 3 or 4 buildings that had been assimilated into the one hotel eventually. And there was a dog had died in this particular bedroom, and the medium said, "Put your hand down there, tell me what you feel." So I did, and it was like a slightly electric tingling in my fingers. She said, "You're feeling the spirit of a dead dog." I said, "Wow." So that hotel and what happened to me in that hotel really, really took me off the shelf. But the only other place I could say what was really spectacular was what is called the Covenanters Prison in Edinburgh. And this, I'm not going to get the history of this, but the Covenanters Prison is part of an old church. And it's 100 metres long, and there's like mausoleums down both sides of this place. And I wrote about it in one of my books. Anyway, again, the same medium was with me, and we went down to the bottom of the Covenanters Prison. And I was standing, and I had a tri-field meter. You probably know what a tri-field is, I would imagine. And the tri-field meter, I put it down on this wall, this low wall beside it. And the thing was switched on, and we were talking. And all of a sudden she said, "Oh, someone's just walked past us." And as she said that, the tri-field meter went full scale back down again. I mean, interesting. But I just left it at that. Then we were chatting and she said, "Oh, someone else just walked past us." And the tri-field meter went full scale back down again. And she saw that. So we both saw this meter reacting to something. So either a random electromagnetic field passed us and she interpreted it as spirit, or spirit was generating an electromagnetic field and the meter sensed it. So that is one time I can guarantee that we actually saw something positive. It's appeared to corroborate what we're actually looking for. But I'll leave it at that. And I'm sitting here hogging it all. If Guy, come on, you have a story.
Oh, Brian, you're fine. I wanted to ask you too, and like when I went to Scotland and when I went to Ireland, I went to Dublin Castle, and Scotland, Ireland, they talk about little people,
Yeah,
and Have you done any investigations on little people, leprechauns, fairies, pixies? I mean, that's
Uh,
interesting.
well, what you're starting to get into folklore when you're talking about fairies. Well, Ireland
Uh-huh.
is obviously leprechauns, and a good friend of mine, Barry Fitzgerald, Barry would do a lot. I mean, I'm not going to threaten this stuff. Do they exist? That's a definite maybe. I don't know. I put my hand in my heart. I don't know. So I'm not going to say they do or they don't. But the Irish appear to think they do. But I think leprechauns are perhaps elementals, and elementals are recognized by most people, I guess, as existing. So do elementals exist? Yes. And if a leprechaun or a fairy is an elemental, then yeah, they probably do exist. But I think it really depends on the person who actually interprets what the signals are getting. They can actually see them or they can manifest to them. In fact, I belong to a group that meets in it's a Zoom group. We call it Friday Freaks, which just about sums that up. And we talk a lot about this kind of stuff. This group, we've got astronomers, we've got doctors, we've got lawyers, all sorts of people. I mean, university educated people, and they've all got a story to tell about this sort of thing. And some of these meetings that we have are really educational because it's not often. I mean, in fact, last yeah, the beginning of end of last year, last November, I got presented with a cup from the group. We went to one of the guys' houses who actually helps run it, and I was given this cup for actually my contribution to the group. And it was extremely well. I thought, well, thanks very much. And it's nice to know that what you're saying is appreciated and it's understood because there's nothing worse when they used to give presentations, they don't give so many now, take it to conferences and stuff. There's nothing worse than having to explain what you're going to talk about because you kind of hope that the audience you're talking to knows what you're talking about. So you don't have to couch it and phrase it and say it very carefully so they know what you're talking about. But yeah, um, I don't do so many conferences now because I just can't be bothered doing it. Because like 81, I've got other things to think about, like staying alive, man, you know. But yeah, anyway, that's enough about me. Talk, you guys carry on.
Well, no, we're just glad to have an experienced researcher, and just from everything I read about you, you do have an extensive background in it, and talking to you now seems like not just are you a researcher, um because you've had those experiences that, like, had you really fueled, to do such a thing, which happens to a lot of people. They have real
Yeah.
experiences, and then they have a search for the truth, so um sounds like you, in the 81 years, like, man, you've come across some good
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, the thing is then, Ian, that most people who have an ET experience tend to have what you would say paranormal experiences after that stuff happens. You know, it's almost as if a gateway had been opened and it allows all this stuff to pour in. I don't know why this should be, but it seems to me that ET may inhabit a reality where anything is possible. Once you start opening the doors between dimensions, I think that in fact, there was a book written some years ago, and if you can get a copy, I would advise you to get this book and read it because it's fascinating. It was called The Skull Experiment.
The skull, yeah,
It
i
was,
i read in your book about how you talked about the skull experiment with
yeah,
Robin Foy,
Robin
Sandra,
Ford.
Dan, and Alan Bennett, the four people
Yeah,
from the spirit. Yeah.
yeah.
um
Well, Robin Foy, sadly, his past, he's gone. But the Skull Experiment, it actually terminated when the entities they were dealing with, talking about, told them to stop it because they were affecting the outcome of events way in the future. And they had to
wow.
stop them otherwise. Yeah, really. And that's when I said, wow. And the other thing that started to bother me, there's one of the pictures in the book, and what is showing here is a grey. It's a grey. Now, this
Okay.
entity, this entity, they called it blue because that was the color on the photographic image. No digital photography then, it was all like 35mm color film and stuff. And they took a photograph of this entity, and it was a grey. And this entity existed in another reality. Now, that kind of stuff fascinates me because when I read that, I went, wow, hey, wow, what we're looking at here. This is what introduced me to the concept that not all ETs are traveling in a linear fashion from star to star or from stars to planets or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I have, I've taken some pictures over the years where have gotten those faces, like, and if you're taking a picture like 2 miles up and there's nothing there, and you get a face, like, it just makes you wonder, like. But
Oh,
I
yeah.
read in the Skull experiment. What do you say to the critics who said that, hey, those people used the house that they wanted to, and they let the people that they knew come in so they could kind of control it, and maybe some of the effects were that with on par with a magician. What do you say to the skeptics about the Skull experiment?
Well, if what I say to the skeptics is learn to have an open mind for a kick-off. Now, one of my buddies, a guy called Nick Kyle, he sort of, if you like, moderates this Friday Freaks group. And Nick was part of the Skull experiment. He travelled to Skull. He sat
Okay.
in what was called the Skull Hole, which is like a cellar in the cellar in the house. And he participated in some of the experiments. He was touched by a child. This child sat in his lap, got down again. You could actually touch. He said you could touch arms, but the arms just stopped, like just above the elbow, and there was nothing there. And he said the other thing that he saw that was really amazing was there was like little UFO, little no, not circular gel, but little spaceships, and these things were flying around inside the Skull Hole. I mean, the whole
Yeah.
thing was quite amazing. But like, sorry,
No, oh no, the
yeah,
spaceships. That did have the little spaceships. That's okay. Yeah, that was fascinating. Okay.
yeah. Well, Nick actually saw this happen, and he was there. Now Nick is a lovely guy. He's a marvelous guy, and I've got immense time for him because he knows what he's talking about. Pardon me. He used to run the SSPR, the Scottish Society for Psychic Research. He used to run it, and I got to know him through there. Now, his wife and him and his wife Sarah, they come and visit me, my wife, and we go and visit them, and we're pretty good friends. And Nick has had a whole bunch of stuff happen, but and here's somebody else you might at some point, Paul, I could maybe put you in touch with if you want to talk to him. But
Yeah.
Nick Carroll is well worth talking about. But the other thing that always fascinated me that I haven't had too much experience about is poltergeists. And poltergeists, I can't quite figure this out because how would a poltergeist generate the energy to lift something solid with weight, with form? How could a thing that is non-material generate the energy to lift something and put it? Because that to me suggests intent. It means to do it, so it does it. But how does it do it? One of my, if you like, big questions. I always ask why and how. How can it do that? What is the reason? And once you start getting down to these levels, a lot of people who only approach the subject from a very peripheral level, they just back off because they don't know. They're just happy that it does happen. They don't ask why it happens. And if you don't ask why, you don't learn. That is why I always ask why.
Hey, Brian, also too, Aleister Crowley was good friends with L. Ron Hubbard of the Church of
Well,
Scientology.
he
And
wasn't good. He wasn't good friends with him. He knew he existed. Put it that way. Right? He
it's
he.
it's rumor.
Crowley was more interested in the relationship between Jack Parsons and L. Ron
Yes,
Hubbard.
Jack Parsons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
We were
also
talking about it last week.
it's
Yeah,
rum
okay, cool. That's cool.
it is rumored that L. Ron Hubbard and Aleister Crowley collaborated in some type of ritual when and was sort of like the skull situation that you guys were talking about, in which a portal opened and UAPs and UFOs who were going
Yeah.
through that portal.
What they were trying to operate was the Alamanta ritual. It was called the Alamanta ritual.
Yeah,
And yeah,
Sec-
they tried to operate this. Now, whether they did or not is a moot point, and whether that was the result of UAPs coming into our reality, because what they were trying to do was create, I can't remember what the hell it was called now, because you kind of sprung that one on me. It was an entity of some kind. They were trying to get this entity into our reality. Now, if they'd actually done that without
yeah,
any control over this,
are you referring to when Jack Parsons felt that the world was too uptight and needed more sex, and they were trying to bring this entity and make it have a child, and do these sex magic
yeah,
rituals to
yeah,
bring?
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. But they tried to do this, but although whether they did it or not, again, it is a moot point. But certainly, as Paul is saying, there was a big influx in UAP right after that. They started coming in, which makes me wonder: are these things interdimensional rather than just interplanetary or interstellar?
I think they're both. I think it's interdimensional
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Alan. Go ahead.
No, I was going to. Do you guys know how pleasant this is for me to like talk to guys to know what the hell I'm talking about? That's really great.
Oh,
Now, when you mentioned about when Alan mentioned about the paranormal, people not really knowing, but then the way he's in, the way he's come across it into it. I mean, it it's good to talk to somebody who would that it's reverse for us. You know about the stuff, and we just have to kind of mention it to you, and you can probably tell us everything we need to know.
I think that's why I got that presentation the last time the group got together. In fact, the cup is it's right behind me on the table behind me, and but yeah, it's a subject that I've lived, breathed, eaten, drank for the past. I would say I got really into it when I was 15 years old, and I've been doing it ever since. My wife gets really pissed off to be quite frankly because I
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
talking about this. Yeah, I keep talking about it all the time, and my wife's interested, but she's not that interested. But when I started writing about it, now this is the thing. I've written 13 or 14 books. I can't actually remember how many, 13 or 14, something like that. But it was almost as if but I started writing about 10 years ago, really writing. And this lasted for about 5 years. And it was almost as if it was a massive download. I was getting all this stuff out of my head on the paper and getting it out there. I didn't write it to make money. I wrote it to inform for anyone that cared to buy it. If it made some money, well and good. Not I mean, I've got no objection to that. But it was just to get this information down on the paper, get it published and get it out there, which is what I did. And I've been very, very fortunate in that I've never had to self-publish. Always a publisher would come up and say, "Oh, I like that, I'll publish that for you." And I would say, "Well, yeah, go, give me the contract, on we go." And I've only ever written one book, which I've got a list of here. I've only written one book about my own stuff, and that was, let me see, not Dark Messiah, not Strange Eyes, View from the Mist. Well, and that doesn't really matter. But I only wrote one book, Book of Secrets, which was about my own stuff. And that's cases that I actually worked on. And I have to tell you this, that I know a guy who lives in Michigan, a guy called Joe Stewart. Google this guy. I promise you, Google this guy. Joe Stewart, Michigan. His wife's called Dorinda Stewart. She's Native American. Now, I know Joe. Joe is a hell of a nice guy. Joe is a demon hunter. Okay. This guy, I've got one of his books and that just right behind me there. His first book was about demons. This is one of the few books I couldn't finish. I couldn't finish it. I was getting too frightened. I stopped reading the book and I told her that she just nodded and said, "Yeah, I can understand that." Because Joe hunts demons and he also hunts Sasquatch. Now, I've always been a bit, not, yeah, well, maybe, yeah, yes, no, about Sasquatch. But now I fully believe, I accept that Sasquatch is real. Pardon, these things that are out there. But I also think they're interdimensional. I think Sasquatch doesn't live 100% in this reality. I think the reasons they've been caught, the reason that no bodies have ever been found is because they don't actually live here. When they die, or when they want to get out the road, they step aside, they take a sideways step into somewhere else, and they just go. Then they come back when they feel they can. I'm pretty sure Joe. Well, the reason I know so much about this is because I edited one of Joe's books for him. In fact, it's not been released yet. I actually edited it for him, and I learned a lot about Sasquatch in that book. Learned an awful lot about it.
Wow.
That's why I firmly believe these things exist, 100%.
Hey, Brian, I used to, okay, I'm retired now, but I'm retired from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Mm.
And I used to talk to a lot of hunters, and a lot of hunters knew who I was because they see me on the local
Sure.
news. They would tell me Sasquatch stories that they saw Sasquatch, they saw
Yeah,
Bigfoot, blah, blah.
yeah, yeah.
I had this one hunter who told me that his father in 1962 was out hunting in the Sierra Nevada mountains,
Sure.
and he saw Bigfoot and shot at it, and it blew up into sparks.
There you
That
go.
told me right there that if that is a true story, Bigfoot can probably go from matter to energy, energy to matter,
Yeah,
being
yeah,
interdimensional type being.
yep.
And that was just like it was fascinating. I was like, whoa, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I really believe him because he seemed very consistent with his story, and he wanted me to go out there and hunt for Bigfoot with him and all this other stuff. And you got some unusual stuff in Scotland and England with black cats. You guys see
Yeah.
these large black cats. What's going on with that?
Well, some of these large black cats, and I've no doubt they're good. In fact, a guy once told me there was a large black cat running around the village, not so much the village, but there's a path about maybe a couple hundred, 300 meters from my house, and it runs alongside a railway line, goes away along to the power station. And they said there was a large black cat down there. I never did see it, but I've no doubt that there was something. But these large black cats, they tend to associate this with extraterrestrial or ET. I don't think so. I think the large black cats, the two or three, there's just not all that many. The really big ones, they've escaped from a private zoo. I'm pretty sure. They are genuinely, yeah, seriously, yeah. And I'm pretty sure that's going on. They've escaped from a private zoo, and they'll go about, become feral. Well, they're feral anyway. But they're
Yeah, yeah.
feral, and they'll go and they'll kill sheep, and they'll do what they got to do to stay alive. Then they die. But there isn't all that many of them. But black cats, yeah, they are there because they're real. But there's nothing. I don't think there's anything supernatural about them. I don't think. They could be, but I don't think so.
And how is it, Brian? Like with the cross circles, I think that's a very fascinating thing. When I went to Stonehenge, I was hoping to see a cross circle, but I didn't. Um, I was very disappointed when I found out the Arecibo message cross circle was a hoax.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
how was it that they created this cross circle? It was so complex and everything else, and nobody saw them do this.
See, well,
I'm confused about that.
okay. Crop circles are the genuine manifestations of ET. I think some of them are.
Yeah,
But there was a couple of guys. You can Google all this. I mean, it's all checkable. A
yeah.
guy called
Yeah,
Doug and Dave. They were
yeah,
out with a tramping boards, and they made these things. They're not all that difficult to make, but some of them are incredibly complex. And you need a lot of people working in complete synchronization to produce these things. So I think some of them are all probably produced by, well, spacecraft, but some of them are fakes. But it's telling a difference. I think probably the more complex the pattern, the more liable it is to be made by ET. The more basic the shape, I would think it's probably made by human beings. But I wouldn't like to. I mean, I spoke to guys that are actually involved in this kind of thing. I've spoken to them a couple of times, and they're actually convinced that they're all ET, and I'm not. I just don't believe it. I mean, it's not a case of disrespect them, but when you must know yourself, guys. When you get into this area of research, you have to lay out some sort of dividing parameters that otherwise you believe in anything. I mean, you can't just believe anything is possible. There are some things that are more possible or more likely than others. But there are things that I'll just call it BS and just walk away from it. But if the people are happy, well and good. They're not doing me any harm. If they want to believe that, well and good. In fact, no. I need to mention names. I'm not going to do that.
And the ones that are a hoax, whoever created them are great artists. I mean, it's yeah, it's fascinating how
You know what, Paul? Paul, you know, if it wasn't, they got a few videos out there of you know, these little light balls or spheres, and some of them actually being made. So if it wasn't for those, you know, I mean, you probably wouldn't. I hadn't really seen too many. You know, and then the thing about people being in the area and then coming back like, you know, 15 minutes later and one happens. Those, you know how complex they probably are to make. So those are probably the ones in question because who could make them that fast, you know?
yeah, and Brian, here in America, we also too we get a lot of cattle mutilations.
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of that in Scotland?
Not a lot, but yes, it has happened.
Ah,
There's been the surgical excision of organs, draining of blood. Yeah, we get it here as well, but not at the same scale as I get in the US. But then again, the US is honestly 100 times the size of Scotland. But
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And England, Scotland, you guys get the crop circles, we get the cattle mutilations. It seems.
Yeah. Well, the crop circles, oddly enough, they tend to occur around about Stonehenge in Wiltshire. So you get a lot of them down there for some. I don't know why.
You said
But
Wilshire?
Wiltshire, yeah. The thing is that why the UFOs or UAPs appear in certain areas, and I think a subject that is ignored is the geology of the area. Because I think when you get natural areas of electromagnetism, and you do get them, the geology, the geology of the countries produce electromagnets, I think they induce appearances of UAP, or UAP tends to be drawn to them. And I'm pretty sure the US government knows this. They're well aware of it because the amount of stuff that's happened in the USA seems to be predominantly more than happens in the rest of the world. But then again, maybe that's because people are looking for it there. But I do know for an absolute fact that where you get areas of geomagnetism, you will get UAP. Always, you get UAP. It's almost as that is a factor in how they function, how they navigate. I don't know, but that seems a factor.
What you said about the navigation, I've heard some military people firsthand talk about the magnetic field and different things. But I want to ask you, since you know you being 81 and being from that part of the world, do you remember in 1976 when the radio stations were taken over by some extraterrestrial entity supposedly, and gave the message that I guess it was Rail or somebody. It was 1976 when they took over the radio stations and gave a message supposedly that superseded all the all the transmissions. Was that true?
To be fair, I don't recall that one. No, that is
Okay.
one. I need to get a little more background on that one. I do recall
Okay.
seeing the back in my mind, some, but not in any great detail, no, to be honest.
Well, the other point you brought up that I remembered, I forgot, is Paul can tell you everybody that we talk to pretty much. I ask them, even if they're talking about ghosts, I ask them, have they seen a UFO or a UAP or any? Because I thought they were, I always felt like they were connected. But to hear you say it, and all of the years you've been doing research, so you feel like they're definitely connected. The poltergeist, the ET, UFO. You feel like there's a connection, definitely, huh?
Yeah. What what I'm increasingly getting towards is PSI Psi, okay, the Psi connection to UAP, because we tend to think, we tend to think that these things are controlled by the brain. The brain is controlling these things because they don't necessarily need to be manned either. And the other thing is, and I've had this happen to me as well, you see something in the sky and you know you've seen it, and it knows you've seen it, and it goes, it just vanishes. Almost as if they know they've been seen and they go. So that is why I'm pretty sure these things have a side connection. But I'm just looking at my time because I can only stay till 10 o'clock, guys. But the thing, something I'd like to talk to you about is Rosslyn Chapel. Okay, now I don't know if you've ever been to Rosslyn Chapel, but you've obviously, I would think you've heard about it, the Da Vinci Code and all that stuff. The Rosslyn Chapel is a portal, okay, and there's a portal in Rosslyn Chapel, and I found it. I found it. I found it back in 1995, 96. But I wasn't able to do anything about it till about 2005. We went back, we worked out a series of frequencies to use because it's all about sound and around Rosslyn, it's all about sound. Now, I'm assuming you guys have never been in Rosslyn Chapel, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, if you go into Rosslyn Chapel, okay, and it's open to the public, there's nothing secret about it, it's open to the public, you can go and do what you like, more or less. But if you go into the chapel and look to the east, where is the rising sun, okay, there are like two pillars. There's a kingly pillar and the apprentice pillar. Okay, that's the two big pillars. And at the back of the pillars, you've got three altars. Okay, you've actually got four altars, but pardon me, the fourth altar is above a staircase, so you can't actually access it. But the altar, the St. Matthew altar, on the left-hand side of the chapel, right against the back wall, that's where the portal is. Now we tried to, if you like, activate that by using a specific frequency. And don't ask me, I should have got this out. But a friend of mine is a professional musician, and he was interested in this subject. And it's a particular frequency, an augmented fourth is the frequency. And he gave me this frequency. So I managed to get a signal generator, small amplifier, a signal generator. And in 2005, we went into Rosslyn Chapel. We didn't tell people what we were going to do because the public wouldn't let us do it. But we managed to get in before the paying guests, before the paying public get. Otherwise, we'd probably frightened the hell out of them. But we set this thing up, and we started playing this particular frequency inside the chapel. And I'll tell you why we did this a bit later. Now, one of the guys who was with us, he went down into the crypt and he started toning. So what you had was the tone we were producing and the tone he was producing. Now, the thing is, we could hear him down the stairs toning. Now, as soon as he started toning, the two frequencies kicked off a third frequency. The chapel was producing that frequency, okay? Then a few seconds later, another tone picked up, slightly fainter. So the chapel was producing two tones in relation to what we were producing. And the guy downstairs, he knew nothing about this. He stopped toning, and the other two tones went click, click. They just stopped at that. Then, because we were producing the base frequency, the initial frequency, but with like electronics, one of the mediums, there was two mediums with us. One of the mediums went over to the St. Matthew altar, and she said, something's happening here, okay? And I took a photograph of the altar. And in the center of the altar, there is an engraved Sinclair cross. The Sinclairs built the chapel. There's an engraved cross right in the middle of this altar. And this was brightly illuminated. Now, it couldn't have been done with a flashlight. It couldn't have been done with a laser. It couldn't have been because it was white and it was very, very tightly focused on the central part of the altar. And I went, Jesus, look at that. Then she's standing with her back to the altar and I'm standing facing her. She says, something's happening at the altar here. And it was like Cold air rushing up from my feet was coming straight up, and you could put your hands out like that to both sides, and it was like going through a barrier, and it was slightly warmer on the outside. Bring it back inside, and it was bitter cold again. And she says, "I'm getting frightened. I'm going to stop this." So we both went back to the side, and we're looking over the altar, and this light's still there. I've got a photograph of it. I said, "I think we better stop this." So we switched off the amplifier, and all of a sudden, taboo, it all stopped. But we came in within an ace of activating that portal. And the thing is that the mediums are saying this is not a one-way thing. This is a two-way portal. Things could have come through from there rather than through from here. But she was more frightened, I think, that somebody could fall through this thing from our side and we couldn't get them back again. So Rosalind Chapel does have a portal. It's right in front, literally right in front of the St. Matthew altar, down at the east end of the chapel. And if any of your listeners are over there, go to the chapel, look at the east end, and right at the left-hand side, you'll find the St. Matthew altar. And that's where the portal is. But I'll tell you how we came to know this, to get to know this. In 1995 was when about the second or third time I visited the place. And I was talking, my wife was there. And I was standing with my back there. I don't know why I was there, but I was standing with my back right up against the St. Matthew altar. And I started to feel really weird, for want of a better word. And I suddenly started to come up off the floor, literally come up off the floor. It's like something was like pushing on my heels and pushing me up off the floor. And my arms started floating up from my sides like this, really strange. So my wife was taking me, and I had this on video, and she was videoing me. I said, "Look, hon," I said, "stand there, tell me what you feel." I took the camera. And she stood there, and I hadn't told her anything. And her arms started to drift up from her sides. So there was something activating right on that altar. But we just left it at that. Now, I told the BBC about this, and God bless the BBC. And they said, "Could you send me this? Could you send us this tape, video?" So stupidly, I didn't record it. I didn't make a recorder. I sent them the tape, and it vanished. That's the last I saw of that videotape. I asked them about it. They said, "Oh, we got it, but we've lost it." Quote, "We've lost it." They didn't lose it. If they did lose it, they lost it on purpose. But yeah, I have known about that Rosalind Chapel as a gateway. In fact, one of the mediums who was have told me that this place doesn't exist 99%. It exists 99.9% here and 0.1% somewhere else. And when the Sinklers built this, we believe that they built the chapel to hide a secret. And this secret was not for mortal man to find. And they hid it in this portal at the St. Matthew altar. Because unless you knew the specific frequency to find it, you would never find it. And in the St. Matthew altar, anyone that looks above in the St. Matthew, you'll find there are bands of cubes running up from angels playing musical instruments. These bands of cubes run up all the way along this, called the Lady Chapel. It's called the Lady Chapel, I think. And all these cubes on the different faces have patterns, if you like. And the secret to this portal is hidden in these cubes. Because when we found this out later, that when these cubes are actually constructed or are actually carved, the nearest they could get to producing the musical notes required was on, say, a sheet of thin copper or a sheet of glass, okay, which would be suspended in one corner, and very, very fine sand, as they would have, will be sprinkled on it. Then the actual piece of copper or piece of glass would be bowed, like a violin bow, something like that. And when they got the frequency they wanted, the actual sand would form a pattern on the piece of, yeah, exactly. And they can actually do this using frequency signal generators, they can actually do very easily.
Yeah.
And we think, I believe, that these cubes were carved with patterns created with the musical notes created with the sand on these pieces of glass or pieces of metal. And that is where the secret lies. But the problem is decoding it. When this guy told me about this particular pattern, it was luck. It was just a sheer fluke. He got it. He got it accurately. that in fact, about a minute, it's churning back in here if I can get the particular frequencies for you. But these frequencies will affect the chapel, and they will affect this particular portal, and it will open if you do it. But I think you're going to have to be very brave, because you're going to have to accept what comes with it. That is the problem, because you're going to have to accept that you could go that way, or they could come this way. And in fact, one of the mediums we took up there back in 1995, she said, "Oh," she said, "they're asking me to bring them through." She was looking at the altar. She said, "They're asking me to bring them through." So she knew there was something. Yeah, yeah. She knew there was something they wanted through. But by this time, she looked around and we were starting to attract a crowd, shall we say. People knew we were doing something and they were getting interested. And the radio said, "Well," she says, "I'm not a freak show." That's why she just backed up and stopped it. So we just left the chapel at that point. But yeah, there is a portal in Rosslyn Chapel. It can be opened. I don't know how to do it. So
Brian, Brian, I would love to go to Rosslyn Chapel. I mean, all the stories they say that the mummified head of Jesus Christ is there, uh, the crown jewels of Scotland, the Holy Grail. I mean, all these stories about Rosslyn Chapel. I mean, anybody who gets to
well,
go there, I would be so jealous.
I could pick you up the crown jewels of Scotland are in Edinburgh Castle. That's where they are. But I know what you're saying about the mummified head of Christ. I know what you're saying about the Holy Grail. That they actually claim that the Grail is actually inside the apprentice pillar. Now, the whole of Northland Chapel is full of Masonic symbolism, absolutely full of it. They claim that the apprentice pillar was, in fact, the apprentice that built it was murdered by his craftsman. The story was that when they were building Rosslyn Chapel, because this was actually funded entirely by the Sinclair family, and it cost a lot of money over a lot of years. But the guy, this master, this mason, who had been tasked with actually carving the Rosslyn Chapel, carving the apprentice pillar, he went away to I don't know, he went away to Europe somewhere to learn how to do this technique. But his apprentice had it carved when he came back, and they had actually built this thing. Because it looks for all the world like a spiral of DNA. Some people said it's actually a DNA spiral. That's what it looks like. You know, when the master mason came back and he saw his apprentice done, he killed him. And this is where the legend of Hiram Abiff and the Freemasons, it ties in with the Freemasons there. I'm not going to tell you too much, otherwise I'll be telling you too much. But the actual carving of the apprentice's head is in one of the walls and one of the corners at the west end of the chapel. You can actually see the mark on his forehead. And this is exactly the same tale as involved with the murder of Hiram Abiff, which is one of the...
Hiram Abiff, wow. Let's talk about him.
Yeah, carry on.
Hiram Abiff. What about, don't they have his thumb or his finger or something they're protecting?
No, all I know about Hiram Abiff in Rosslyn Chapel is that his carving his head with the mark down his forehead, the scar where he was struck, but he was murdered by his trainer, his instructor. His carving is up there.
What nationality is Hiram Abiff?
I would guess he's Egyptian or Syrian. I'm not 100% certain.
Yeah, that character fascinates me. So you know quite a bit about the Templar and the Masons.
I know a little bit about the Masons and the Templars, yeah.
Oh yeah,
Nice.
Because to be fair, there's an awful lot of BS. There's a lot of BS talked about the Templars. They claim that they were magicians. They were no, they weren't. What they were, what they were, if you like, the paramilitary wing of the Catholic Church once upon a time.
Okay.
They became extremely powerful. They became so powerful that they threatened the autocracy of the Catholic Church itself. So the Catholic Church disbanded them because they were getting frightened.
Okay.
The Templars were actually going to set up their own country in Europe, and because they were incredibly wealthy and they exhibited amazing, talents. There's no two ways about it. It's been argued that the Templars found America, the USA. That's one of the things that's been. I've seen that promoted, I'd throw it on the shooters. I mean, I wouldn't argue about it.
Hey, Zandine, me and Brian have a thing in common. We've both been to Stirling Castle in
Yeah,
Scotland, and that is a
Wow.
very fascinating place. If you went there, you would probably get lost. I mean, it's so big. I was going to ask Brian, what do you think about the infield haunting? Uh, uh, is that just a big,
oh,
is that just a big hoax or
yeah.
what?
No, no. Um, the Enfield haunting. The Enfield poltergeist. Did that happen? Yes, it did. Was it a poltergeist? Yes, there was. But I know I'm trying to think too feminine, well-known American, or the Warrens. The Warrens turned up there briefly. Ed and Lorraine Warren, they turned up at Enfield to have a look at this thing. They were there a day and left again. They didn't solve it, they didn't stop it, they didn't cure it, but they were certainly there. But it was only because it had become such a big deal in its time. But the Enfield poltergeist, it's a bit like a poltergeist case that I investigated over about 50, 20 years ago. It was called the Sochi, Suchie, the Sochi poltergeist, which is a village about 5 miles from where I live, 6 miles. And there was a pretty heady going, a heavy duty poltergeist manifestation there. And there was all sorts of stuff going on. Stuff was getting moved around, banging, noises, voices, the whole deal. There was a girl called Virginia Campbell who seemed to be the epicenter of it all. And eventually, when she left Socky. I can't. She went down to England someplace, and it went with her. The actual manifestations went with her because when she left the house, it all stopped. I've got a photograph of the house. I mean, I wasn't going to knock on the door and ask the people, "You still got a problem?"
Yeah, yeah.
They'd probably invited you to leave pretty quickly. But yeah, I know where the house is, and I've got a photograph. I've got a photograph of the street. But yes, was there? Yeah, in fact, because I'm old, this appeared on BBC Radio back in the 1960s. They were talking about it then. So yeah, it got on the news. It didn't get on TV because we didn't actually have TV then. It certainly got on the radio and they were very interested in it. But they had people that shaman involved in it, that all sorts of people involved in it. And there was, in fact, I spoke to one of the Church of Scotland ministers, Reverend One. I think it was Reverend, I actually spoke to him about it, and he saw it. He actually tried to help the girl that was actually involved in all this. He told me that he was sitting on the side of a bed and she was lying in bed, and there was another pillow beside her. And he actually saw the outline of a head to press into the pillow as if something was lying beside her. And he actually saw, there was like, there was a cupboard, like a basket thing at the bottom, what you ever keeping sheets in. And the lid of that came up and went down, the door opened and closed in the bedroom. He actually saw this happening. So there was a poltergeist there, but it left with the girl. And I stayed with her for, I guess, a couple of months, 2 or 3 months, but she moved out to England. But eventually it just dissipated and just went. Now, I know people have tried to get hold of her and she will not talk about it. And in fact, when I was doing the investigation back in 1990, but yeah, it was 1990, they won't talk about it. They just will not talk about it. They refuse to talk about it because it was very upsetting for them, I guess. But it's one of these things that, it's just one of these things you just sort of run across. Or a thing that I've come across, some of the stuff now I just won't get involved in because I'm frightened of it. Anything that involves what I would term as magic, I'll leave it alone because that is genuinely terrifying. Because once you start messing around with magic, you're opening a lot of doors. You're opening doors to things you just don't want here. The demons, yeah. I'm pretty sure demons do exist. In fact, Joe Stewart, who lives in Michigan, he I think I mentioned him earlier. Joe is a demon hunter. He's also hunts Sasquatch. Joe, I've got one of his books. As I said, that it's one of the few books I had to stop reading it because I was getting frightened by some of the stuff that guy has seen stuff you wouldn't believe. He's actually had to go into a block of flats or apartments and cleanse the whole block. There was dozens of these things running about. And that's why I said to him, I was talking to him, I said, listen, Joe, are these things demons? Like we would expect things coming from hell, demons, satanic. Or are there something else? Are they just a particular malignant spirit? And he said, no, these things are something else. Now, I didn't push him on it because I don't want to open that door, because I don't know what's going to come through it, because I don't know if I get rid of it, because I've had stuff in this house twice that's come back with me in cases, and twice I've managed to get rid of it. I've had to cleanse the house twice, and each time I managed to get rid of it. But it's not a thing, it's not an area I choose to go down anymore. That's why I don't go out in ghost hunts anymore, because I'm terrified of something coming back with me. Simple as that.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. Ryan, you just blew my mind today. Thank you for all this good information. Oh my
Still,
God.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Top
only
show.
too pleased
Top
with it.
show.
I'm only too glad that I could be of help. Yeah.
We're up to the hour. So, Brian, how can people reach you, get a hold of you, see some of your works, your
Okay.
books, and
Okay.
stuff like that?
Okay. Well, if they got maybe a pen and a bit of paper there, give them a website. There's www.brianjallan, ALLAN, brianjallan.co.uk. That'll get to me. That's www.brianjallan.co.uk. That'll get my website, and there's a contact email address on the website if they want to talk with me. And I'm only too happy to talk.
Brian, Zandine, you got any last questions for Brian?
Now, next time when we get you on, Brian, Mr. Pisces, the head Pisces, I want to ask you about Enochian magic and John D, the Black Magician, but that's for next time.
No problem. John D was not a black magician. There you go. He wasn't a black magician, but we'll leave it at that. We'll leave that till next time.
Okay. Great
Okay,
to
guys.
talk to
God
you
bless.
about Finger Pisces. Great being a Pisces, huh?
Surely is. Surely is, man. God bless. You guys take care. Have a good weekend or whatever.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you.